Okay, Mr. Einstein and I are going to tell you a story. And I think you're really going to like it. It's called an epic. And I looked this up. An epic, according to literature, is a long narrative poem about a national hero. And this particular epic is the Anglo-Saxon epic. Now, let me tell you a little something about Anglo-Saxons. Okay, they were part of three tribes once upon a time, the Anglo-Saxons and Jutes, that were hanging around everywhere and camping out here and there because they were nomads. And that doesn't mean that they never got angry. That meant that they were just roaming around and they didn't settle anywhere, right? So while they were hanging around, they came upon what we now know as the British Isles. And turns out the Romans had been there already and they built some roads and buildings and things like that. And so they decided they wouldn't camp out anymore, that they would just stay there. And so that was called the Anglo-Saxon period in the British Isles. Now, I don't know what happened to the Jutes, but they lost Billings somehow, but maybe we'll talk about that later. Anyway, this comes from the Anglo-Saxon Epic, which is called Beowulf. Now, some of you may have heard of Beowulf before. You know, either in the movies or maybe in your English class. I don't know. But either way, it's a really great story. And I'm going to tell you one exciting episode from that epic called Beowulf. Now, it's pretty easy because there's a really small cast of characters. There's Beowulf, who is the hero of the whole thing. And there is Hrothgar, who is the king of the kingdom that is having the problem. And the problem is Grendel. And Grendel is a monster. And this monster shows up in Hrothgar's kingdom and just chews on people. I mean, he picks up people and he eats them whole. Can you believe that? All right, so then there's one more character at least, and that is Grendel's mom. Yes, this monster has a mom, and we're just going to call her Mom. And they both live out in the forest, the deep, dark forest. And out in that forest, there is a loathsome pool. I think there's more than one loathsome pool, but they live in a loathsome pool, Mom and Grendel. And that's all there is to that. There's a couple other little things that'll come into play, but we're just going to tell you that part of the interesting story of Grendel and Beowulf and Mom. And it's the Anglo-Saxon epic long narrative poem about a national hero, and that national hero, of course, is Beowulf. All right. So what happens is Hrothgar is having a big problem because in his kingdom, this monster Grendel is showing up every night after Hrothgar's people have gone out to battle. I don't know who they're fighting. Maybe it's the rest of the Jutes, you know, they're worried about they lost Billin, but I don't know. They go out and fight. They come home and they figure it's a long day at battle. They get to celebrate. They celebrate. They make a lot of noise. They drink a lot of mead. You know, it's an alcoholic beverage because they couldn't drink the water because it was really bad for them. But anyway, so they have a big old celebration, and this Grendel character shows up after they've been partying and they all pass out, and he grabs a couple of people and eats them and runs back out into the forest to the bottom of the loathsome pool. And that's all she wrote. So finally, the people in Hrothgar's kingdom, even though he's a pretty popular king, they finally go to him and say, look, Hrothgar, you're our king and we like you a whole lot. But this guy has just been munching our cousins and our sisters and brothers, and you got to stop it somehow. So Hrothgar says, okay, well, I'll tell you what, I'll send out my best people. So he sends out his best people, That doesn't work either. They either come back with limbs missing or they don't come back at all. And that later on they find the armor because Grendel, chews everything up and spits out the armor. So Hrothgar, finally, his people come to him and they say, look, this isn't going to cut it because, there's such thing as rising up against you. So you're going to have to do something about this because we can't live with this Grendel chewing on our cousins and brothers and sisters and, all that. So Hrothgar says, well, I'll tell you what, I have me a cousin. And this cousin, I hear tell, is a superhero. And I think he's defeated a lot of monsters along the way. So I'm going to give him a call. Well, they didn't have a telephone back then. So he had to send out some messengers on horseback or whatever. I believe that they had kind of like a Beowulf of signal, kind of like a bat signal. And they send out that signal and suddenly Beowulf shows up in Hrothgar's kingdom and pops up, and Hrothgar says, well, you know what, Beowulf? I'm glad you're here, cuz. Happy to see you, but I got to tell you right away, we got a major problem here. Big old monster. His name is Grendel. I'm not sure how they got the name. I think maybe they named him Grendel, and maybe Grendel means, big old guy with big old teeth because he's eating everybody. But anyway, so they tell Beowulf all about the monster and how he shows up and how he grabs people and eats them and all that stuff. And Beowulf says, I'll tell you what, me and my men, he had brought about 15 men with him, me and my men are going to go out there and beat Grendel. And of course, Hrothgar's men are like, okay, you look like a regular short guy. I can't believe that you might be able to beat this guy. But I tell you what, we're desperate. So we're going to believe you. And so not only does Beowulf say that he's going to beat this monster, but he's going to beat this monster without using any weapons. And that's a big thing because Beowulf had a magic weapon. He had a sword that was named, yes, his sword had a name, Hrunting. Hrunting. Now, you may be thinking to yourself, hey, I know about another sword that had a name, Excalibur. Yeah, but that came way later. See, Beowulf got late billing on that too. So anyway, he had this Hrunting sword, but he decided that he wasn't going to use that either. So he's going to just beat Beowulf. He's going to beat Grendel on his own. Beowulf is the hero. He's going to beat Grendel on his own. So Hrothgar and his men say, okay, so what's the plan? So Beowulf says, I'll tell you what, throw a big old party, make lots of noise, and we'll get Grendel to come on in, and I'll take care of him. And of course, Hrothgar's men are like, I don't know about that because he's eaten a lot of people so far. We throw a big old party and he's going to eat some more people. Of course, Beowulf is like, well, you know what? If you don't bring him here, I can't find him because there's lots of loathsome pools out there. And if you don't bring him on in here, I can't beat him. So Hrothgar and his men say, okay. And Beowulf says, I'll tell you what, I'll put my men in the front. No matter what happens, we'll be first. All right, so they throw a big old party and they all celebrate. They have meat and they drink and they pass out and everything. And sure enough, after they've all passed out and everybody's asleep, Grendel shows up. He stands on the end of the kingdom and he says, look at this, another buffet, another marinated buffet just for me. And he moves in and he grabs one guy and eats him up. He grabs another guy, eats him up. Meanwhile, Beowulf's keeping an eye on him, right? Sure enough, the next thing that Grendel grabs at is Beowulf, right? Grabs at him, takes a hold of him, and as soon as he takes a hold of him, he realizes this is not a regular guy. Beowulf grabs back, right? Grabs a hold of him, and Grendel immediately is like, oh my gosh, this guy is not regular. And sure enough, as soon as he moves in toward Beowulf, who's always sleeping with one eye open, right? They start fighting. And Beowulf has a hold of him. Grendel's huge, but he's still kind of like the cartoons you've seen him before. You know, Tweety and Sylvester and everything. Suddenly, Beowulf looks up, and all he has is his hand and an arm in that hand. And he looks over, and sure enough, there is Grendel with one of his arms pulled off. And Grendel's like, oh my gosh, I have an arm pulled off. What do I do? So he runs off through the forest with one arm, and he's running, and he's going back to the Lonesome Pool because why? He's going to tell his mom. And as we all know, that's a real danger when you're going to tell your mom, right? But meanwhile, back in Hrothgar's kingdom, Beowulf's like, woohoo! I have beaten Grendel, and without a weapon at all. I didn't even use grunting at all, right? So they all have another party, and they all live it up and everything because they've beaten the monster, blah, blah, blah. And and they're all supporting Beowulf. They think he's great. It's like, oh my gosh, he pulled his arm off. There's no way he could survive that. Grendel, meanwhile, has run back to his loathsome pool with the one arm, right? And he dives in and he dives down and he gets to the bottom while Beowulf and Hrothgar and that bunch are all celebrating, right? He gets down to the bottom of the loathsome pool, and at the bottom of the loathsome pool, who's waiting for him? Mom Monster. And as soon as Grendel lands at the bottom of the loathsome pool, ladies and gentlemen, Mama's waiting. And Mom says, where have you been and where is your arm? And Grendel says, I went over there to Hrothgar's place as I usually do. And there was some guy and he fought me and he pulled off my arm. Wah. And Mom says, fine. Hrothgar's place again? All right, you get over there in the corner and I will check on you later. I'm going to go back there and see what the heck happened. All right, so meanwhile, Beowulf and Hrothgar and all his people and Beowulf's people are all celebrating, even though they lost a couple of people. But they're celebrating, having a good time, making a lot of noise and everything, and they're drinking mead and blah, blah, blah. And pretty soon they all fall asleep, right? And here comes, you know it, Mom. And Mom shows up in the middle of Hrothgar's kingdom, and she says, what the heck went on here? And everybody's asleep except you know who? Beowulf. So Mom reaches out. She grabs a couple of men to take them for a to-go order, and she grabs Grendel's arm, and she heads back to the loathsome pool. And guess who follows? Beowulf, Beowulf's men, Hrothgar's men, and Hrothgar slowly following behind, right? And they all go through the forest and they're traipsing through there and they're all going to get revenge and blah, 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 right? And they get all the way to the loathsome pool. And when they get to the loathsome pool, what does Beowulf do? What every hero does. He makes a speech at the top of the loathsome pool and he says, I'll tell you what, I'm diving in there, I'm going to do my business, and y'all wait here, and as soon as I get back, we'll have a big old celebration. I can handle this, no problem. So he dives into the loathsome pool and leaves his men, Hrothgar's men, and Hrothgar waiting there at the top of the loathsome pool. He swims and swims and swims, and there's these monsters attacking him all the way down, and he swims, and are you going to believe this? He swims for a full day, trying to get to the bottom of the loathsome pool where he can find Grendel's mom. He swims, and he swims, and he swims, and he gets attacked. Right? But he lands at the bottom of the loathsome pool where there is a cave that has air and they can all fight. Of course, you got to be able to fight. So he lands and suddenly he spies in the corner. First of all, he sees Grendel off in the corner and he's done bled to death. You know he had, because you don't pull somebody's arm off and they don't bleed to death. And then he turns around and he looks and he sees Mom. And Mom is standing there with her hands on her hips, as most moms do. And Beowulf says, what are you going to do about this? And Mom says, well, I'll tell you what I'm going to do about this. I'm going to cut your head off when I get a chance. And Beowulf says, no, I don't think so. So they start fighting and flinging around, and sure enough, Mom is flinging Beowulf around big time. Whacks him down to the ground and almost kills him, picks up a dagger and he's about to kill him. She's about to kill him and he leaps up and he takes over and he looks in the corner and he sees a monster's weapon. Oh yeah, sees a monster's weapon. Hunting wouldn't work because the monster and his mom had put spells on all the weapons that were just normal weapons like hunting. Yes, so he picks up the monster's weapon and he swings it in one fell swoop and cuts off Mom's head. And it's okay to cut off Mom's head because Mom is a monster, bad person, right? So he cuts off Mom's head and then he looks around and he thinks, what shall I take with me so I can prove to the people up top that I've done my job? And he sees treasure. I mean, there's lots of gold and rubies and diamonds and all kinds of things, but he thinks, none of that's going to work. Plus, I got lots of stuff. I don't have to worry about that. So he thinks, I think the best thing I can take with me is Grendel's head. So he cuts off Grendel's head and he grabs it. Meanwhile, at the top of the loathsome pool, people are getting pretty desperate because it's been over a day, you know. So Hrothgar has left because he's pooped. He's an old guy, you know. Hrothgar's men, they're like, that's it. He ain't coming back. So they leave. Beowulf's men, they're worried, but they don't want to give up on him. Plus, they've seen him overcome all kinds of adversity. So they decide they're going to wait on him. They wait and wait and wait, but they're getting pretty worried about things. So Beowulf, down at the bottom of the loathsome pool, grabs a hold of Grendel's head, and he starts swimming. Now, I don't know how you swim with a monster's head in your hand, but hey, this is an epic. You know what I'm talking about? So he swims, and his peeps are waiting at the top of the pool, and they're like, okay, that's it. We can't wait any longer. This ain't happening. So they start to leave, and as soon as they turn around, they start to see bubbles at the top of the lonesome pool. And they look back and they think, oh my gosh, I think he did it again. And sure enough, suddenly Beowulf pops up, and he's got Grendel's head in his hand, and he's got Hrunting's hilt in the other hand. And even though it's melted away because it wouldn't work on the monsters, he brings it home with him because we think maybe it's going to regenerate, kind of like livers do. But anyway, so he pops up, and he's got Grendel's head, and he's got Hrunting's hilt, and they all rejoice. They have a big old party, and they're all happy, and they run back to Hrothgar's kingdom, and they tell him what all's happened, and they've rid the kingdom of both Grendel and Grendel's mom, and everybody's going to live happily ever after. Well, there's lots more to the epic, but that's the most exciting part of it. And I hope you enjoyed it, I'm sorry, I got to fix this grammatically. Mr. Einstein and I really enjoyed telling it to you. So I hope you enjoyed it. It came from my little kitchen back here, which isn't much for an epic, but it's where it came from. So I hope you enjoyed it. That's Beowulf, the Anglo-Saxon Epic, which was written long before 450 AD, because they didn't know how to write. So it wasn't till later when the Pope decided that he was going to send some monks over, and the monks knew how to write, in Latin. But anyway, it all got written down, even though it was passed down by word of mouth, which is known as the oral tradition. But anyway, that's how you got this story. It was fun, wasn't it? We weren't going to lose that. So I'll talk to you later, and maybe I'll bring you something like, I don't know, the Fairy Queen, or Samuel Taylor Coleridge, Rime of the Ancient Mariner, something like that. So come on back, check it out, and maybe it'll work out for both of us, all right? Talk to you later. Bye now.